our house and our home is on fire. So this is, I believe, in many ways, the moment that we have been waiting for. So this is kind of when leadership really matters. Change making, is easy when everything is going normal. But when disruption happens, then it's really that we need to rise to the occasion. We need to wake up to our true purpose, to our true awareness that we have not only as individuals, but also together as a community. So this image you see here from my colleague and artist, Kelby Bird, is a depiction of what I believe is the essence of the current moment that we live in, which is that we live in a moment of disruption. And what does disruption mean? Disruption means that the future will be very different from the past and the present moment we are living in. So when we are here and current reality is here and the emerging future is there, then we know a lot about current reality. We know less about the emerging future, but we know least about how to move from here to there. And that's what I would like to talk to you a little bit about. Because I believe that when you look at this challenge, how do we respond to disruption, which is a challenge we each face as individuals, as organizations, as societies, and as a global community. The perspective that Theory U is taking on that challenge is that the future is already here. It's already, and we can feel that here in Mendoza, right? So the seeds of the future, of the future society that we need to create are already here. But in order to connect more fully with them, we need to go on an outer journey that takes us to the edges of the system, but also on an inner journey that allows us to connect to the deeper sources of knowing. And that's what I would like to talk a little bit about. And the questions that the organizers put to me for my upfront remarks for your 3 days here is, what actually does it mean to be systemic in our current time? Because often, like also corporate social responsibility has a bad name right now, because it's just greenwashing things, which in substance are still moving us in the wrong direction. So I want to come back to that question, but first talk about, so I started with disruption happens. And the next observation I want to share with you is, okay, what are the responses that we see to disruption? The responses that we come up with as organizations, as society, as individuals. And I happen to believe that across all countries I have been visiting, we see the same three responses. The first one is downloading, which means same old, same old. So you continue what you're already doing. And we know that's no longer an option, right? So that's clear to everyone. So there are two more responses that therefore, by the hour, right, become more and more important. Number one, turning back. So turning backwards in order to make ... great again, right? Basically orienting yourself in the past, right? And the Trump phrase, make America great again. The most important word is the again, because it means you orient yourself in the past. So that's the second response. And it is based on ignorance, hate and anger and fear. So that's the strategy that's being deployed and amplified. And the second response is, or the third response is, leaning into the emerging future by activating our curiosity, compassion, and courage. So those are the two responses that we see. So when we face disruption, they are fundamentally two different ways how we can respond. One is by freezing our mind, right? Closing the mind, freezing and closing the heart, and freezing and closing the will, which leads to ignorance, hate, and fear. So that's kind of when we turn away, when we turn backwards, and when we manage to lean forward, to turn it towards the emerging future that we don't know what it is, then we open the mind, open the heart, open the will, which means we have to activate curiosity, compassion, and courage. So those are the two fundamental reactions whenever we face disruption that we can engage in. And sometimes we manage to lean into something that we don't know by opening the mind, opening the heart, but sometimes it's just too much. And what happens to us kind of leads to a freeze reaction, right? Kind of where we move, where we are thrown into the other space. So in my view, the phenomenon of Bolsonaro and of Trumpism is a result of two forces. One is disruption happens. And the second one is our lack of capacity to access these deeper sources of knowing. The open mind, the open heart, the open will. And if you face disruption, you do not have developed these skills as a community or as an individual. You are thrown into that upper space. So that's kind of what we see playing out, and that's where I think our intervention point should be, right? Because we need to, what we see today, kind of we all come together here because we are co-creating this world. That's kind of one big narrative today. But then we also see the other narrative going on. And when you look, when you look into the public conversation today, this is what, takes out all the oxygen of the public conversation. It's dominating our awareness and our consciousness because it's super amplified by two main forces. One is dark money, right? The climate denial industry, for example, in the US. And the other one is the surveillance capitalism. It is kind of a business model coming out of Silicon Valley that is basically maximizing user engagement by activating hate, anger, and fear. That creates for $1 trillion business. And the biggest companies on earth, while also ruining our democracy and the foundations of our society. So if you want to read more about that, there's probably the most important book this year, Surveillance Capitalism, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Scharmer, who goes into great detail about that. So this is kind of the world we live in. And part of our change, I think, part of our challenge is, so as I said, two narratives in the world. This narrative and this narrative, two ways of responding to disruption. But what we are lacking is, on this side, an amplification mechanism. On this side, we have the social media that every day is amplifying kind of all the messaging here. Here, we have a lack of an amplification mechanism. And this calls for innovation in new learning infrastructures, in new democratic infrastructures, and innovations for infrastructures for a new economy. And that's basically what's bringing us together. So, systems thinking is basically starts with a very simple distinction, which is the distinction between symptoms at the top and root issues at the bottom, which includes the structures, the paradigms of thought, and the deeper sources of creativity and inspiration and knowing. So when we look at the symptoms at the top, we see kind of three main domains of problems today. The ecological divide, the social divide, and the spiritual divide. By which I mean the disconnect between self and nature, the disconnect between self and other, and the disconnect between self and self. So when you look historically, this is kind of the problem of inequality, right? The whole environmental issues, where did the environmental movement start, right? Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, some 50 plus years ago. It's really about how the unintended impact of technology on the outer nature. And what happens today is that we see the unintended impact of technology on our inner nature, on the human mind. That's kind of the 21st century version of that problem. So these are kind of the three main issues that we deal with and we need to be aware of as we are, as we are moving forward. So what is systemic? Systemic is everything that helps us bridging these divides. If we do something that is not improving the most vulnerable people, the well-being of the most vulnerable people in our community, it's not systemic. We can just talk about everything social, it's not systemic. If we do something that is not increasing the well-being of our kind of ecological ecosystems, it's not systemic. If we do something that is not increasing the choices and possibilities of future generations, it is not systemic. You know this, of course, right? The SDGs, so they can be grouped according to these three categories. The social, the first 10 focusing on the social divide, the next 5 on the ecological divide, and the last 2 on the spiritual divide. So how is it then? So that would be kind of my first definition of what is systemic, right? Systemic is what helps us to bridge the three divides. Anything we do that is not helping us to do that is just hot air, it's just noise. And there's a lot of noise, including on corporate social responsibility. So the second criteria, I would say, is that we need a process, right? So how do we do that, right? How do we have that impact? We need a process that takes us out of downloading and moves us through the stages of observe, 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 by which I mean going to the edges of the system, the deeper sources of knowing, accessing the deeper source of knowing, and then, learning by doing, kind of design thinking.